what this place is supposed to be, I don't blame you. This is Gwinnett Place Mall, a shopping center that opened in the 80s with over 300 stores, but now dwindles to 40 or less. When you go inside, it looks like it might even be abandoned, but nope, it's still open. If I were hypothetically a location scout for a popular TV show set in the 80s that needed a mall location to shoot at, this site is such a clean slate that it would be kind of perfect for a movie crew to come in and transform. And that's exactly what the Stranger Things producers thought when they decided to turn it into their big set piece for the next season. So yeah, you probably guessed it from the title, but this is Starcourt Mall. So far, no sign of Russians. And today, at this pretty appropriate location, I figured I'd talk about the time I was an extra in Stranger Things Season 3. It's been almost a year since I was an extra on Season 3, which is kind of crazy to me. It does feel like yesterday, as cliche as that sounds. But I figured now would be as good a time as any to talk about what my experiences were like. Obviously, I was not a high-ranking member of the crew or something. I was just on set as an extra, and so it wasn't like an experience where I can tell you the ins and outs of the production. But at the same time, I feel like for people who are interested in being on film sets, no matter what your dream job would be, this might be something that's fascinating to you, hearing how the set worked, and it was certainly fascinating to me. I was paid to watch them film Stranger Things, which I thought was kind of awesome. So yeah, contrary to what this mall set piece behind me may make you think, I was not an extra on the mall scene. I was actually an extra on, wait a minute, this scene. The fair in Season 3, which I thought was going to be the biggest set piece, but then it turned out to be the mall. So, I don't know. It was still fun. So I was on the fair set piece shooting Season 3 over the week of Halloween last year, 2018. So it has been literally a year since then. And I think it was like a 5-day shoot, something like that. It wasn't my first time on a film set. I have been on film sets a few times before, one of which was when I was about 10 years old. My dad made a feature film, so I was on that for about 3 months or so, and that was awesome. And then I visited a couple other TV show sets and everything. But this was the first time that I have ever worked on a film set as my job. And so it definitely had a new layer of dimension to it because of that. I had a friend who I was staying with who lived about 30 minutes-ish from the shoot. It was in the parking lot of the Renaissance Festival area here in Georgia. So basically there's a giant field that they use for parking outside the Renaissance Festival, and they were using that giant field as the fairground set piece to set up everything. And it was huge enough that they could set up an entire fair and then also have extras parking and then also have base camp later, farther down the field with the costume tents and the dining hall and all this kind of stuff that they needed for everybody. So I was staying at my friend's house, and I showed up at the set at 4:30 p.m. on the first day, which my call time was 5, and you always want to show up a little bit early. And I had, somebody directed me from where to park, so it was further down in the field, and they had parking for all the extras and everything. And I parked my car, and then they had a shuttle that would take you back across to the other end of the field where extras were signing in and everything. So I got on the shuttle, and as we're driving through, I see Millie Bobby Brown in her own private shuttle leaning out a window and waving hello to somebody. And I was like, all right, well, if I'm looking to see celebrities at the shoot, then I guess this is a good precedent. So I won't bother you with all the boring stuff. I had to fill out a bunch of forms and taxes and all this kind of stuff. But eventually I got in line to get fitted for my costume and everything, or I had been fitted, so just to get my costume and pick it up. And they hadn't started shooting yet. It was 5 p.m. All of the shoots were night shoots, so we would start around 7 or so once the sun had gone down, I think. So I see a couple guys who are just standing around and waiting to be told what to do, and I walk up to them and I'm like, so what's going on? I just made some small talk or whatever, and I come to find out the one dude's name is Cole, and the other dude's name is Gabe, and they became sort of my two good friends throughout the rest of the shoot, which was awesome. I was very heartwarmed, is that the right word, by the amount of kind of connections I made from just being on set with people. It was pretty surreal though, because like as soon as the shoot started, I would be seeing people out of my peripheral vision and being like, wait a minute, that's David Harbour, that's Winona Ryder, like they just passed me, what? There was one point in the night where me and Cole and Gabe were all waiting in a heating tent. It was very cold outside, which I'll get to, but so we were waiting in a heating tent, and finally we were kind of fed up with that, and we were like, all right, let's just see what was going on. And they had set up some heaters outside because it was getting really cold at that point. This was like midnight. We were like just waiting around by the heaters, just observing and seeing what was going on, and all of a sudden, I see a dog walk by, and I'm like, huh, a dog. I just point and look at the dog, and then I look, and the dog is on a leash, and I look up the leash, and walking the dog is David Harbour, and he's smoking a cigar, and he's Chief Hopper in the flesh, and I'm like, ah. And so we just all sort of watched with our eyes affixed as he walked by, like within 2 feet of us. And that was the first of many, like, you know, oh, there he goes, just walking by, kind of things that happened for the rest of the shoot. So I guess the big thing to know about all 5 nights that I was working was that it was freezing cold. So you see that scene in the show, right? And it's the fair scene, it's July 4th, everyone looks like they're having the time of their lives, it's fireworks, it's a fair, everyone's in shorts and short sleeves and everything. We shot that and it was like 40 degrees outside. When I was getting fit for my costume, I mean, they were giving me the shortest shorts you've ever seen, totally 80s, like Jackson Pollock looking shorts. And I was like, well, it'll probably be a little bit chilly. But little did I know that by the time the first night was up, I would be like, I almost froze to death. Like, it was crazy. And nobody expected that. I mean, it was freezing cold. And so we would all be like shivering, and then they'd be like, all right, it's July 4th, rolling, here we go, action. And we'd be like, all right, it's July 4th, it's July 4th, it's summer, it's summer. For the most part, me and Cole were on the ground, just kind of walking past in the background and everything, but there were a lot of people who were on rides for most of the shoot, and I actually got placed on them a few times. There was one time when we were on the Scrambler ride, which is one that goes around in a circle, and then that goes around in a circle, and oh my gosh, the thing was that it was, the ride was built in the 80s, and so it took forever to turn off and on. So what they would do was, we would be on the ride, and they would just leave it on for like 10 minutes straight while they got like 5 takes in before they had to turn it back off because it would take so much longer to turn back on. So I'm not the kind of guy to puke on a ride, but I came pretty close right about then. I guess people want to know about, like, what celebrities did you see? What actors did you see? What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. And so, you know, it was cool. I said it before, it was very surreal because they were just walking around the whole time. I mean, the main stars of the fair scene are David Harbour, who is Hopper, Carrie Elwes, who's the mayor, Winona Ryder, who was Joyce, and then the dude who played Alexi. He was around the whole time. One of the days, all of the teen actors stopped by, so Nancy was there, Jonathan was there, Steve was there, and that was really cool. They weren't in the scene, but I think they just stopped by to see, and so that was awesome because they were just sort of floating around the whole time, and I got to see Steve's glorious hair in person. It was amazing. I actually saw Alexi's death happen like 4 times. And so I knew about that before the show aired. That was the one like big spoiler I knew about, but back then I didn't really know who Alexi was. But yeah, like they had like 5 of the Woody Woodpecker giant plush toy props that he would be shot through laying about. And I think I touched one of them one time, just like going past it or something. Yeah, so it was something. Oh, and then of course there was the Duffer Brothers were there. That was cool. Yeah, I got to see them working. So this, I don't think all the episodes in season 3 were directed by them, but this one was, which was lucky for me because I got to see what they were like as directors, and that was awesome. They were very high energy. I mean, especially since it was an all-night shoot, but what they would do was constantly, they had their iPhones and they were running around the set like getting almost storyboards in a sense. Just filming like takes on their phone and seeing what it looked like and then trying that with the big cameras. And so that was cool to just see how kind of, you know, casual they were about the whole thing, I guess. And yeah, it was cool to see them work because they were just kind of high energy the whole way through. Unfortunately, the sun is going down, and as cool as this location is, I think I may need to finish things at home. So I'll see you there. I tend to describe my week on Stranger Things as one of the best and worst weeks of my life. Because it definitely had an element of worstness to it, right? It was freezing cold. I was staying up from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning and struggling to drive home without falling asleep at the wheel. Lots of the time on set consisted of just waiting around to be given orders. Lots of the extras were kind of snooty because they'd been extras before and they thought that made them big stars. And sometimes I'd have to ride 40-year-old carnival rides that they had to leave on for like 6 takes in a row because they couldn't be turned on and off easily. But don't take all of this as needless complaining, because I also see it as one of the best weeks of my life, and I'm super, super, super grateful that I got to be a part of it, you know? Even something like the cold, which I thought was miserable at the time, in retrospect kind of made the experience better because it created a community amongst the extras and the crew since we were all freezing our butts off. People talk about when you work as an extra expecting the PAs to be rude to you and boss you around and everything, but on this set in particular, I felt like there was at least a mutual respect between the PAs and the extras because we were all going through the same crap together. And even though everyone else on the crew was definitely doing much, much harder work than I was, it still felt like a week where I was fulfilled and pushing myself to work harder and harder even though it was tough. I'm still pretty torn on whether I would want to make a film set my life, you know, because as I've discovered, it's crazy nonstop and you have to focus all of your energy and efforts on it, and it's super draining. But at the same time, you know, I felt very fulfilled throughout most of the week. And when it was done, it was like I had finished summer camp or something like that. On the one hand, one of the most amazing things about being on set was all the stuff that you'd expect about seeing the artistic process, right? Like being a part of my favorite show when it was getting made was awesome. And I loved seeing how directors direct and how much work goes into making a movie or TV show. It was awesome. But on the other hand, I think really the most amazing thing about being on the set for me was meeting all the people and seeing all the community and understanding how everyone has a story and they all bring that to make a piece of art happen. I met new PAs who had just started working on film sets a couple months ago and were still super optimistic and excited about it. And I met old guys who had been on film sets for 60 years and were very cynical. And hearing both of their perspectives was awesome and worthwhile. I met the extras who had no idea what they were doing and were totally new to this and just excited to be on Stranger Things. And I met the extras who had been in the background of loads of famous movies and wanted to show me screenshots of them circled in red. And I experienced an environment where it really felt like, for the most part, everybody was trying their best and giving it their all because they were working on something that they loved and they knew lots of other people loved. So this is kind of a sappy way to end it, but really the reason that I would consider my experience worthwhile and the reason that I would do it again in a heartbeat, even though it was kind of miserable, is really that I loved hearing all these different people's stories and understanding how much work and sleep deprivation and variety and talent goes into making a show as great as Stranger Things. I guess for some people, knowing the behind the scenes of how a show got made might kill the enjoyment for them, sort of like finding out the secret to a magic trick. But for me, it only makes it more enjoyable and more magical, right? Like now I watch that fair scene and all I can think of is how many people and how much talent and how much sleep deprivation went into making it. And that makes it better for me. Also, and this is the kicker, because we were all freezing our butts off together, I ended up making some lifelong friends in Cole and Gabe, and they came to my Stranger Things watch party in July, where we got super excited about seeing ourselves in the background. So that's why in under 20 minutes and with very limited experience from me, I'm telling you that film sets are awesome, but they're also super hard work, and I'm not sure if I would want them to be my long-term job, but they definitely give you a new appreciation for the filmmaking process, and you might make some new friends along the way and have some awesome screenshots. The end. If you liked this video, you would have been able to see it like over 2 weeks early on my Patreon, so it's pretty good. Go check it out. I'm not gonna bore you with super outro stuff. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment your favorite Stranger Things character down below. It helps with viewer engagement and whatever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. I don't know why I said that. Bye.